Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context as we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
I'm Max Tarrant.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective with some connection. It could be the same director, the same lead actor or similar theme. And this month we are discussing La La Land, which came out late 2016, and Singing in the Rain, which came out, 1952. The connection being they're both musicals. So, Sarah, do you want to start us off and give us a bit of a rundown on Singing in the Rain?
Singing in the Rain, in my top 6 films of all time, will be for the rest of my life. As you say, Jeremy, a 1952 film directed by Stanley Donen and a bit of co-direction, I believe, from Gene Kelly, the wonderful singing and dance man, for MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, one of the major studios in Hollywood of the time. Singing in the Rain is a fabulous film for all cinephiles and everybody coming to film because it revolves around the realities of the advent of sound in the 1920s. We have Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor, who are stalwarts of the MGM musical era, playing musician, actress, wannabe actress, and film star extraordinaire in an era when black and white silent films were all the rage. All of a sudden, a rival studio brings out a talking picture where sound is synchronized with what we see on screen, and all of a sudden the studio in Singing in the Rain has to step up to the plate and get on board with these changes in technology, and a wonderful, enchanting story ensues.
With music.
Oh, it's a musical.
Yeah.
Did I mention that?
It's a musical.
It's a musical. So there's singing and dancing and acting, and it's old school and it endures.
Excellent. And William, La La Land.
Okay, La La Land from 2016, the new brainchild of Damien Chazelle, he's a wunderkind. I mean, what, he was 30 when he made this? That's crazy. I'm 30. What have I been doing with my life? So La La Land is set present day. It's a contemporary musical about two dreamers, as the movie calls them. Mia, played by Emma Stone, is an aspiring actress, and Seb, played by Ryan Gosling, is someone who wishes that people would treat jazz with the respect that it deserves, even though no one is. And it's a love story. It's a story about what it takes to make it in Hollywood, if it takes anything, or if you actually have to make every single sacrifice that you can make. And now it's, currently just an awards darling. Got nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, won a whole bunch of Golden Globes, and I think is going to do quite well.
And it shares the record for the highest number of nominations at the Academy Awards.
14.
14.
Goodness gracious.
In 13 categories, because of course it's up for 2 songs in the song category, so it can't win more than 13.
Right, interesting.
Phew.
It's worth putting a disclaimer in here for our listeners that we had a discussion before we started about La La Land in regards to spoilers. We typically try to not spoil the current film, whereas the retrospective film is sort of up for grabs because we feel like it's been out there long enough. But we're going to try our best to be spoiler-free with La La Land while still talking about some of the more significant moments that could be spoiled. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there.
Sounds good. So let's jump into it. We're going to start with Singing in the Rain. And what's interesting about musicals, of course, is what does the music mean? What does the dance mean? When do we get into these spaces? And for me, it's going into the space of kind of emotions. Usually I feel that the music is used as kind of a representation of going to a kind of space of emotions or an emotional feeling. And so I think that was really fantastically done in Singing in the Rain. And I thought in particular what was interesting was the use of space. So because this is a kind of a bit of a different realm, it's not necessarily a very literal realm for me.
Meaning the musical?
The going into the music.
Yep.
It kind of... the film did some fantastic things with space, like opening it up, using the studios to create really interesting effects with lights jumping out that you didn't know were there, creating kind of slightly phantasmagoric kind of cityscape. I don't know. Did you guys find that interesting?
I think it's kind of meta in that regard, isn't it? Like there's that great scene where Don Lockwood takes Kathy, is her name Kathy?
Kathy Selden.
Kathy Selden
Yeah.
into the studio, and it's just an empty stage, and then there's all that great construct where turning on lights and bringing in a fan, and it creates it so clearly. You know exactly what's going on, yet it works. It's still a really lovely moment. So.
I've been wondering whether one of the strengths of Singing in the Rain and one of the things that made it intensely popular is that probably in 1952 they weren't watching a lot of films that took you behind the scenes of Magic Land, into behind the scenes of the studio and behind where all the magic happens. Certainly for me as a cinephile, one of the pleasures of Singing in the Rain is seeing the behind the scenes stuff. Whereas now, interestingly, 2016, we have grown up over the last several decades with either Christopher Guest films like For Your Consideration or David Mamet, was it State and Maine, I might be thinking of. So The Player, and films that actually take you behind the scenes in Hollywood and network and behind the scenes in television, you're right, and dispel, or sort of, I suppose it's breaking that fourth wall a bit, isn't it? And so nowadays, when we watch something like La La Land, we already know what Hollywood sets look like. We've all done the Universal Studios tour, probably, and we've seen the facades and all that.
I think all of the making of as well, the rise of the DVD and how the bonus features have the making of. I grew up watching all those sort of things, so we're a lot more...
So it's quite demystified.
Now,
and yet
certainly.
Interesting that this film comes out, La La Land, which does have a very similar interest in kind of blurring the bounds between film and reality, and kind of thinking about what do the characters in films think about and how do they act. Like it's again quite meta, I think, in that way.
And then speaking of 2016 films, also Hail Caesar
Yes.
did a very, very similar thing with how the studio spaces were set up and using that as part of the storytelling and talking about the facetiousness of Hollywood and making that a major plot point, which is very much Singing in the Rain.
That's true.
Coming back to the music, the music in Singing in the Rain is interesting, and I don't know whether you're aware of this, but all of the songs are songs that had previously been in other, like not films, but other
musical popular music of the 20s and 30s, I think.
Yeah, and it was all that producer, the producer that made the film. He thought, there's all this great music that we've used in like the little short films that are played before the main feature. Or television, or whatever it is, let's collect all those into one film. And that's where the music of Singing in the Rain comes from. So a lot of people would have been familiar with a lot of the songs in Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, I really felt like it was, and I didn't know that, but I felt that it was steeped in kind of already, at that point in 1952, steeped in quite a significant culture of films. And I think it's good to remember that kind of, that history behind the whichever old film we're looking at, because I think there's a chance that when we look at two films, we go, here's the new one and here's the old one. It's kind of like bookended, but we have to obviously respect that there's this massive history behind even the old ones.
Yes, that's a good point.
I just love how much nostalgia both Singing in the Rain and La La Land have towards old films. With Singing in the Rain, it's the silent movies of the 20s.
Yeah.
And with La La Land, it's the musicals of the 30s and 40s specifically. But there's such a sense of both reverence and of... I guess where the directors are coming from, the whole standing on the shoulders of giants thing. This is how far we have come, but we could not have gotten this far without everything that had come before.
Really good point. And as we all know, particularly from Whiplash, but also obviously in La La Land, Damien Chazelle is a massive jazz fiend. And of course, jazz is not a particularly modern or contemporary musical genre. So Ryan Gosling's character in La La Land is not just a jazz pianist, a jazz musician, but somebody who wants to open his own club and keep that legend and that history alive.
A purist,
absolutely. And you're right that also in La La Land, Emma Stone's costumes, in fact all of the young women's costumes in it are throwbacks to I guess I would say probably 1950s kind of frocks and pretty little bar shoes with a little bow and that sort of thing. And it's very unself-conscious, because nowadays you could see young women, you do see young women wearing those clothes, and you don't think, oh, do you think she's in a play? You think, oh, that's somebody who likes to wear sort of slightly vintage clothes or whatever. But it absolutely works both in a 2016 context and in a, as you say, sort of a love for the nostalgia and sort of, as you say, a reverence, isn't it? Yeah, true.
And I think La La Land demonstrates above all else that anyone could love musical films, but you will never love musicals as much as Damien Chazelle loves musicals.
Yeah.
Because, man, it's almost like a fan film in places. Like he's gushing, he wants to put all the stuff on celluloid, and it's amazing just what appears.
Just to pick out a couple of throwbacks to specific films, and talking about the frocks. That scene with the girls getting ready for the party definitely felt like Grease to me. It was like the scene with the girls in the bedroom singing about boys and whatever. There was a real clear point right near the start of the film where Emma Stone's character is at that party and the music kind of is slow and it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up, which I was like, oh, West Side Story. The same thing happens in West Side Story.
And the imagery is also very similar to West Side Story as well.
Yeah.
Everything is a little hazy, really, really colourful.
And a lot of block colours as well. A lot of block colours and big prints, and in that regard, much more 1950s advent of colour and kind of everybody going, hey, we can make things colorised, let's go crazy, than they might nowadays.
And then, of course, some very, very clear links to Singing in the Rain. I mean, we talked about whether or not we would pair these films because they'd be so easy to compare. And there was definitely throwbacks. I mean, we've already talked about both of them talking about film. But, I mean, I think about the fantasy sequence at the observatorium, is it?
Yeah. The Griffiths.
It's very similar to the one I just described earlier in the set, when they're but I Was Meant For You. Is it the song they sing?
No, but it'll come to me. But I know exactly the one that you're... Not you are my lucky star.
No, that comes later on.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was meant for you.
Could be. Could be. So you're absolutely right. So up in the observatory in La La Land, there is a scene that you sort of think as a viewer, oh, wait, is this really happening? Or is this kind of just nice? And then you think, oh, well, this is really beautiful, so I'll just watch it and who cares? And I think you made an interesting point at the beginning, Max. This ties back to, for me, La La Land walks this grey area between... because it isn't a sort of an incisive commentary about the way Hollywood works, except that it also is, because Emma Stone goes to auditions where everybody there has auburn hair and a white blouse, and we know that that's a trope of modern Hollywood. But then La La Land also allows there to be this fantasy aspect, because I'm always struck by, before they go into the observatory, Ryan and Emma, or who are we calling them? Mia and Seb, have just met at a party, and then they break into a spontaneous dance routine, which of course nowadays it's literally impossible to do that unless you both happen to attend the same Sarot class. You know,
why nowadays? When would have that happened?
Well, no, right, then you're right. So, like, never, exactly. And this is obviously one of the tropes of musicals, is that you suspend your disbelief that these people magically manage to sort of coordinate a dance routine together.
I think it's particularly egregious in Oliver Twist, or Oliver, exclamation point.
Right.
Where the Who Will Buy My This Beautiful Morning sequence ends up with what seems like 200 people.
I love that film.
On the streets in complete synchrony.
Yeah.
Did these people just discuss for weeks beforehand?
Yeah.
And then, okay, guys, this is it. This is the morning.
And yet, of course, Oliver is at least a musical, right? So we allow it because it's part of that trope.
The reality of it.
If you remember, in 500 Days of Summer, which is not a musical in the traditional sense, same sort of thing, isn't it? He comes home from the date or whatever it is.
That's true.
And he starts dancing in the street, and all of a sudden there's a flash mob, and the whole of, is it Central Park? I can't remember where it's set.
Yeah.
They're all dancing as well. And again, we go, well, this is charming, so we'll allow it. But getting back to La La Land, obviously much more intentionally, these are the tropes of a musical. But the blurring, I think, is interesting, because you've got Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, who are, look, let me just say, they do not need to be nominated for Oscars, particularly not against the people they're up against, but whatever. They're both immensely likeable, and they're hardworking, and they do a great job. But throughout the film, they are real people. They don't sing that great. They don't dance perfectly compared with Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds.
Lots of critiques of that from people that I know as well.
But it shouldn't be a critique, should it? Because it shouldn't be a
Well, it
criticism.
depends. Yeah.
Well,
Because-
I have a criticism against the New Zealand Herald, which is a rubbish newspaper. That they had this item
sugarcoating of that
saying
is
why critics are hating La La Land.
It's rubbish. Critics aren't hating on them.
Because
In
they're
fact,
terrible at dancing and they're terrible at singing. It's like New Zealand Herald, what are you talking about?
I mean,
Have you seen there's a Saturday Night Live sketch that came out last weekend, which is good cop, bad cop, in a cell, grilling this guy, and he's like, I don't even know what I did, and then tell us what we're going to repeat back what you said on this date, and they repeat back what he said, and it's effectively like, oh yeah, I thought La La Land was a bit overrated, and they're like, oh,
all right.
how dare you?
Right.
I thought singing was a
That
bit
was the
average.
feeling
Dude, that's
that I
the
had.
point.
that people were actually gushing over it so much, probably more than I would think it deserves in some ways. But there can be an issue with that, them being just lifelike characters in some ways. If it's a throwback, then maybe you kind of, I don't know. For some people, they think, okay, well, it needs to be, we need triple threats. We need the people that can sing, dance, and...
You're Channing Tatum's of this world.
Oh.
I don't know if Channing can sing. I can't remember, but I think he can from the Hail Caesar.
From Hail Caesar, he
But
does.
he
such
was
a good
extraordinary. So I mean, he's a proper actor. Ryan Gosling, bless him, he can do the moves, but
Apparently he is a
he's an
dancer
actor, not a dancer.
as well. But
He started off as a dancer.
Started off
Oh,
as a
with
dancer.
Mickey Mouse Club.
I think even before that, I saw
Right,
a Graham Norton clip
okay.
with him
And I do know that I know that Chazelle said to him, "You don't have to learn the jazz piano," but that Ryan Gosling went ahead and did his own.
That was amazing.
Piano.
That was an amazing performance.
But again-
doing that piano, wow.
But again, we're talking about committed, talented young people, actors who have not been raised in an era that said if you can't sing, dance, and act, you ain't getting work.
Yeah.
Who happen to have chops in other areas but are not experts. Personally, as a critic, I don't think that that's something to be criticised. I think that Damien Chazelle very purposefully wanted to, and this comes back to what you said, Max, make the musical relevant to a sort of a contemporary world. That we maybe all do respond to this emotion, even if we are not dancing up and down Great South Road or, in our respective school playgrounds or
we
whatever.
should.
But maybe in our hearts we are, because it's a human instinct. I don't know.
I think there's often criticism with film musicals in the last 10, 15 years that when an actor is cast that maybe isn't the strongest singer. But I think I'd much rather see a good actor doing an okay job at the singing and dancing than a great singer who's
hammy.
Hammy.
Very true. Yeah.
And I think the criticism came I think Moulin Rouge was
Yeah,
Basil
that's
Moulin
when it
Rouge
started, that's right.
was he sort of revived the musical because
Yes.
there hadn't been one for a long time.
True.
And there was that criticism.
He being
of
Baz
Nicole-
Luhrmann, listeners.
Yeah, and there was
Yeah.
that criticism of
Ewan McGregor or Nicole Kidman?
Nicole Kidman, her singing voice. Interestingly, as well, the Academy acknowledged Moulin Rouge with a number of awards, but it wasn't until Chicago the next year that it actually took the Best Picture Oscar. And just talking about the Oscars, I think there's a case to be made about, this is kind of moving a little bit away from musicals, but about them being behind the 8 ball in a lot of senses. There's a lot of
The
examples.
Oscars are.
There's a lot of examples through history where they will give the Oscar to the
totally.
film that
Yeah.
maybe the next year that is riding off the coattails of the one that actually
Totally.
broke ground.
Yeah.
So I think about Spartacus back in 60 something around there. Spartacus, which was I think fantastic, but then of course the next year Ben-Hur, which is very hammy, won all the awards.
That's right. That totally makes sense as well politically and stuff. People kind of they need kind of
time.
They need a bit of goading
Yeah,
into it, and then the same with like actors, right? They can do amazing performances early on in their career, and then later on they get
the Oscar for
recognised
something.
Or for the next film.
Yeah. And just thinking back to Oliver, you mentioned Oliver, that came out in 62, but I'm just off the top of my
So
head.
is that the Polanski one?
No,
No,
it's
the,
it's the big
Oh, it's
musical.
Lionel Bart?
musical.
Yes, Lionel Bart.
Yeah.
Oh, Lionel Bart.
It's really fantastic,
Yeah.
but it
because
came
another
out
one
at the
as
time.
well. That's also meant to be really good. But
When you look at the films that came out in that year, and again, I can't quite remember the year. Maybe it might have been something like 1967. Like a really a year in terms of Vietnam War, like all these really groundbreaking films coming out, and Oliver wins the Oscar. This very heartwarming, saccharine,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until the next year that I think Midnight Cowboy took it away.
Yeah.
And so, just I guess to actually link it back into what we're talking about with La La Land, I feel like it makes perfect sense to me that it's getting all of this gushing over it because we're in a very politically unsettled time, particularly in the States. This is a film that is escapism, without glossing over a lot of the realities of what it is to be a jobbing actor or musician in Los Angeles. So, yeah, it makes sense that people are just going nuts over it.
Oliver was 1968, so you're bang on, because Midnight Cowboy will have been 1970, I would have thought. So,
68,
yeah,
okay.
so you're bang on with your...
So you think 68, that's Vietnam War, that's the height of like flower power, that's like protests.
It won 5 Oscars.
And it's a brilliant film, don't get me wrong, I love Oliver. But can you see what other films were nominated that year along with it? Is that easily accessible?
I'd have to have a look. But
Interestingly, like I think I can relate. This does link in somehow. I'm not quite sure how, but it doesn't seem like musicals are a self-sustaining kind of thing, though. In recent times, you had Moulin Rouge and you had Chicago, which were probably more similar, and so they stuck together a little bit. But then in between and afterwards, it has been quite choppy, and you have things like The Artist, which is kind of already done a throwback to Singing in the Rain.
Well, I was going to mention The Artist. I think you're absolutely right, Max. The Artist came out and it was black and white and it was silent, and everyone was like, "Wow, how many of these are we going to see?" And then all I remember is seeing that wonderful Spanish version of Snow White, Blancnieves or whatever it was. And then everyone went, "Yeah, no, I think we're done with that now. I don't think we need any more black and white silent films." And I think they were bloody right as well. So I don't think that La La Land, as you say, is going to...
It's not going to Renaissance.
No, I don't think it is.
But Renaissance, Frozen, of course, was massive. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it was massive. And Moana, which I know we talked about, but in terms of musical, I love Moana.
Yeah, but all the animation films, most of the animated films... I mean, you're our Mr. Animation.
I haven't talked to you guys about this yet, but I much prefer Moana over Frozen.
Partly Frozen,
yes,
definitely.
Partly because it doesn't seem like it's ashamed to be a musical. There's songs left and right, and some of them are great, some of them not so great. But who cares? It's always in its heart a musical.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what we were talking about with the people needing, and Disney probably knows this, that people need a bit of goading to get into it, and so they put out a musical that's a bit more kind of closed off about it and not very proud of itself being a musical. But then when that kind of starts to build people up to it, the next one they can actually go up confidently and go, "Look, okay, we are doing a musical now."
I love Moana. I've seen it twice now. I was surprised how much I loved it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Really strong film. To the point where I'm not sure whether I want Moana or Zoolander to win the best.
Zootopia.
Zootopia.
I hope that's what you mean.
Zoolander 2,
yeah.
the Razzie. No, Zootopia or Moana to win the best animated.
Moana will not. Moana won't
Zootopia
win.
will
There's
definitely
no
win just
way,
because of the political climate.
And
fair enough.
I mean, this is not a Moana conversation, but Moana is really contextually about us and for us. The rest of the world isn't going woohoo. I finally heard Rachel House in a good role, and I think she's tremendous, but no one else gives a hoot,
I didn't even know it was her until afterwards. It doesn't even sound like her, does it?
But is your point though that that Moana is a musical, and the animated films are often musicals, and therefore there is an appetite for them?
My point is that I think there is a renaissance that started with Frozen. Potentially Tangled, but I don't remember if there's much musical in Tangled.
There's like three songs.
Right, so I would give it to Tangled, because I think that was the start of Disney Animation's revival as well. But I think that in terms of renaissance, that's where we'll see it. I won't be surprised if they bring out another Disney Princess musical in the next couple of years.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, to me, Moana felt for the first time in decades to be a Disney musical. Frozen has some songs that are really, really good, but it never felt to me like it was like a musical from the 90s, where every single one of those just had such memorable music, and it's cross-generational. You could be 5, you could be 60, and you would know the Disney songs. And Frozen has that one song Moana has a whole bunch, and that's, I think, what makes a difference.
5? I think it's got 5 songs, eh?
I do think, though, if you'll forgive me, gentlemen, because I'm not a massive Moana fan, but that doesn't have any bearing on what I'm about to say. I do think that the markets are so different. I know that we've spoken in the past about the fact that adults enjoy animated movies as much as young people, and I think that's true, but those musical animated films are designed for a market of young people, little people, who love to sing and will sing the songs over and over, and will rewatch the films over and over and over. And I feel like something like La La Land is different from that.
Yeah.
And I do not think that there will be a massive appetite for a whole lot of
That was my feeling.
La
I think
La
it's
Lands.
a little bit
I
of
agree.
It's a nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a passion project, and it's more of a nostalgia thing than trying to start something new.
I do too, and we're comparing it to Singing in the Rain for very good reason, because we all watched it and went, blimey, this has got a lot of throwbacks to Singing in the Rain, or isn't it resonant, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I agree. I do not think that he's about to launch a whole realm of copycats, and I really don't think that there should be any either,
No,
because
I
they will
agree.
inevitably be compared to La La Land, and it'll become a thing like, oh well.
It's La La Land light.
Yeah, Lindsay
yeah.
Lohan does sing better than Emma Stone, and, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, and I
think this is partly why, for me, it wasn't like I really enjoyed it, especially when I was in it, and especially at the start. But then I came out of it and I was like, that wasn't that significant. And I feel like maybe it's because he's not trying to do anything crazily new.
Well-
And also that would play to the Oscars, I think, being relatively conservative voter base, or however it works.
Especially
That
for a movie about the industry.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
pretty conservative. It doesn't
Yeah.
challenge anything major. The meaning of it overall, the moral is kind of slightly vague and not hugely
Problematic.
important.
I think
Yeah.
the moral of
Yes,
La La Land
yeah,
is
probably, yeah.
problematic.
Yeah.
I mean the message.
He's got a
The
problem with
message,
that, I think. Actually, I'm actually moving off him because I loved Whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I kind of thought about the moral. I was like, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
The moral of
This is
Whiplash: you must
much
follow
worse.
your dreams at all costs. Because
Even if
There's
it's
two things.
self-destructive.
Yeah,
I think
right.
There's two things
Yeah.
going on. There's the follow your dreams at all costs, which I'm sick of. I'm so sick of because it's such a lot of crap, and it's so pushed
Yeah.
from, just do it to screw over all the relationships. Pretty much just saying your
Yeah.
dreams, achieving your dream of being a star is more important than the relationships in your life.
Which
Yeah.
is exactly this. That's right, and that's exactly La La Land.
Yeah, and the other thing is as well, he's a purist, and like the whole
Yeah.
message about jazz should be this and this, and then John Legend's character challenges him and says, "No, it's got to move with the times." And then there was that moment where he's on stage and like Emma Stone's character is realizing that he sold himself out, and I was like, "This is a load of crap."
This music is really good.
This music's really good. They should be moving with the times. Like all great for appreciating jazz, but. Come on,
Yeah.
the fantasy that he's going to have this really successful jazz bar that's so purist and
Yeah,
I mean-
pretty sappy stuff. Mate.
No, I mean he might, and it would be lovely if he could.
Yeah.
For those who do want to, trip down memory. I mean, I fantasize about somebody creating a sort of a speakeasy type bar or club that I can go to dressed in period costume and
that sounds awesome.
drink champagne from saucers and so on and so forth. So in theory, he could do it. So maybe and it's interesting, I feel as though we didn't say at the beginning how much we loved the film or how much we didn't, but it definitely feels as though we've all turned a little. I agree with Max. I gave it 4 stars and it didn't make my top 20, much to the chagrin of some commenters who thought, what a dumb list if it doesn't have La La Land. I'm like, 4 stars is still really good. It just wasn't in the top 20, but whatever. But I came away feeling less than, a lot of people came out of it absolutely enamoured of it. And I came out going, oh no, that was there, it was lovely, and there were some really good bits, but I feel a little uncomfortable about where it went narratively for my own personal sake. And, I wonder, therefore, how conflicted, no, maybe not conflicted, but I wonder what the heck Damien Chazelle's intended message was, and whether it got a bit muddled in the way that it came out, or whether he wants it to be quite grey and to say, look, we fantasize about these things, these are the realities, but I'll give you a movie where stuff happens anyway, because it doesn't actually happen. It does happen at the expense of other things. So it's not a Singing in the Rain ending.
which I did love it for that.
Yes.
My view of the film is that I thought it was a good film. It was elevated by some great moments. Like I think the ending for me was fantastic. Like the last 20 minutes, just like even though you feel like it was a bit abrupt, I was like, cool. I'm happy to take that because it made a really clear statement, even if it was problematic. I also loved the scene, for all the musical scenes, and I loved them. I loved my favourite scene in the movie, and where I shifted from thinking, this is quite good, to, oh my gosh, I'm really enjoying this, was the fight scene between the two of them in their living room, and it was bathed in green light, and
That's why I was thinking
very
green.
subtle, really subtle. The dialogue was fantastic. Like, it just, they said so much with so little.
That was their best acting.
Oh,
and
it was
the only
amazing.
time, funnily, when they're at each other's throats was the time I felt the most kind of acting chemistry.
And it wasn't even that they were like aggressive or cruel to each other.
No, they were just
It was so
heartfelt.
real.
Yeah.
And that for me was what made the film great, if not being great the whole time. If you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I thought, this is a good film.
And obviously the production values, you can see why it's getting, in some ways, 14 nominations, because there's so many different areas that is just so tight. Like, the music is so spot on. I love that. I love the song more than, or that main motif more than I love anything from Moana personally.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's a beautiful motif. And just the lighting, the colours, everything
costume.
is beautifully shot.
So interestingly then, it feels to me that he's taken all the technical elements of this old-fashioned musical, and he's been pretty religious, what am I trying to say? Find me the word that I need,
Putting
gentlemen.
it all together in a
He's been
tight little
consistent in his use of all the technical aspects, of a musical, and yet he's put in an interesting narrative that doesn't quite flow the way that you would think a traditional mid-20th century musical narrative would have gone. And I think he's to be admired for that. And maybe that's what people are loving about it, do you think?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that point that it's got that escapist quality without it being all a happy ending, because that's not where America's politics is right now.
No, that's right.
It's really
and it's
unsettling.
The unhappy ending is where it's at right now, right? Rogue One.
Yeah.
So
Which
back
happened
in the
70s.
day...
It happened with it happened with Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And people were disenfranchised with their political systems. There's all these type of films that came out, very dissonant endings. And then, of course, once they kind of got through that, Star Wars comes along and is a roaring success. And in the 80s is all this...
So this is why context, as you rightly said earlier, Max, is everything. Because in 1952, nobody had TVs, did they? In 1952, you went to the pictures. It was entertainment. That's entertainment for a reason. You wanted your happy endings. You wanted your singers and dancers to be spot on, because you're not paying good money to go out for the night to hear, actors sing. So that's why everybody's indentured stars and all that sort of thing.
That's actually a plot point for Singing in the Rain, a major one as well.
The fact that they needed
and
to
can I
sing.
just say,
The
like,
advent of dubbing, so good.
Right.
The three leads are brilliant, as we already talked.
In Singin' in the Rain?
Yeah, but the fourth lead...
Oh,
Jean Hagen?
Jean Hagen.
Oh,
Yeah.
she is amazing. And you probably know this, Sarah, because you're such a big fan, but a lot of the overdubbing later on with a singing voice is actually her. The lovely, low, rich, that's actually her real
I
voice.
didn't realise that wasn't Debbie
She used to
Reynolds.
be on radio as well.
And a lot
Right.
of Debbie Reynolds' singing is not her, it's ironically. It's
amazing.
It's
What a turnaround.
That actress we just said,
Jean
I don't know her
Hagen.
name, Jean Hagen, and also another singer as well.
This is all made so much more. This adds to something that's very interesting, I think, about that film. Jean Hagen is not on any of the billing. You've got three. The main poster is three people, the two men and the one woman. And I think there's an issue with this politically. This film, I think
With
there's
Singin' in the Rain?
Yeah, I think there may be a significant feminist issue. I think with
I
this.
would agree.
Oh,
I would agree with
look,
that.
So
she's a device. She's not a character. She's a device.
She's a villain.
Yeah, but I mean, she has to be there in order for Debbie Reynolds, who is the
Right.
character,
yes,
to
but
fall in love with Jean Kelly.
in some ways, to me, it feels like I mean, it depends on your politics, but it's kind of like individualism versus feminism as a kind of females united, because this antagonist, the Jean Hagen, gets used so that this other woman can be elevated. But I think that's really interesting. So let's just paint a little picture of the ending.
of Singin' in the Rain.
Yes. And the last shot is zoomed in on Gene Kelly's face. He's been immortalized for this fantastic success that he's created.
On a billboard. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a pictorial, whatever. And it slowly zooms out and you go, you realize it's a double billing. And it's got
Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds on the other side.
Kathy
So it's saying,
Self.
look, we've actually achieved
Equality.
equality. And I think it doesn't quite achieve that because basically they have to use two women to create the one thing, but they have to overdub one woman with another woman to create the one star. I think there's quite an interesting political thing there that they've kind of chopped up one woman's voice and put it over another woman's acting. It's kind of like the statement for me was, you need two people
It's
for a man's
Frankensteinian.
job or something like that. Yeah.
Or maybe to create this incredible male fantasy, you've got the gorgeous Lina Lamont, who looks stunning and whom everybody thinks is this massive movie star because she is, but she doesn't talk right, and so therefore you have to put Kathy Selden's voice to make her the perfect,
exactly.
the perfect
It's the
creation
control
for
of it
Jean
is quite
Kelly.
interesting. I mean, for the time, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
1950s, it was a huge step forward, and that statement is so bold at the end to go, look, we have reached equality. But then you look in the film, I found it fascinating looking through the film, the use of gays, when the three main characters get together and they're finally like, you know what, this is what's going to work well. They find out that these three are going to be the success story. We've really kind of nailed a unity. And then after that, it's all the men talking about how they're going to actually orchestrate this. And it's like controlling her. She's this kind of...
Yeah, she's a puppet.
symbol of like,
she's a puppet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and as you rightly say, it's 1952, so I don't think they were trying to be feminist. I don't think they were striving for equality or anything. And I think the only reason Donald O'Connor's on the bill, I mean, Donald O'Connor is just... He's a puppet. He's just the best... He's just the
His
best
song,
friend.
Make him laugh.
Make him laugh, exactly.
And he's doing exactly that for us.
But when you think of the context of MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, the studios, who had to churn out however many movies a year, and these actors or these performers were on contract, and Donald O'Connor was a real guy, and Jean Hagen, I guess, was probably less of a gal, but do you know what I mean? So yes, I suppose he will be, Donald O'Connor, despite being just the best friend, will be on the billing, but also he gets his own numbers, doesn't he? Gets Moses Supposes and Make Him Laugh and Good Morning, and you're right, and she doesn't, but I think, Lina Lamont. My blog is Lina Lamont.
I was going to say,
LinaLamont.wordpress.com, because I have always loved Lina Lamont, partly for her being a marginalised character, but I also really liked the fact that she sounded so different from the way that she looks.
It's amazing.
It's a great farce.
And
she's kind of stereotyped and archetyped as a character that's famous in literature, right? The female that is either crazy, a bitch, or
stupid.
You know, and she's kind of all three.
Yeah.
And it means that you kind of go, it's okay that we hate her. She's
and that she's humiliated.
Absolutely.
It's pretty mean.
And the men are like, they're smiling their faces off.
Yeah.
No, but don't forget, she was nasty, remember? She tried to humiliate...
Hoisted by her own petard.
Yeah, that's right. So yes, literally.
Talking about the Make It Last sequence, I was watching it with my younger sister and brother, I'm pretty sure, and when he was doing all the falls and there was no laughs in the room, and they just went, what's he doing? And I said, this was probably funny back in the 50s. I'm like, yeah, probably.
You were watching it on silent, you mean?
No, we were watching the film, and then he's doing, there's a whole sequence where he's like...
make a laugh. Oh, I see, yes.
And they're just like, what's he doing? It was didn't get any laughs.
That's
just an example of comedy.
So the physical comedy, no.
That's funny as well. That's exactly that's pretty much the same moment where Perlina walked into the room. My girlfriend happened to be watching, and she came in and kind of had a look at the screen. And I was like, this is the worst moment for her to spot in, because he's just rolling around on the floor looking crazy. And I was like, and she's just like, okay,
what are you
off,
watching?
Whereas a lot of the other comedy, I think, still really works. I think
some of the verbal stuff is...
The synchronization issues.
Absolutely.
And we haven't even talked more broadly about the fact that it's just, it is a fantastic movie, and it's from the start far better than La La Land or anything I've seen recently.
Great. The music's
it starts with tension. It's like, who's this character?
Totally.
It's just dramatically, it's so well tuned.
It's devastatingly clever and funny. You're absolutely right, and that's why I say that Singing in the Rain, I do think, endures. I think it is as good today as it was in the 80s when I first watched it, as it was probably in 52.
Totally. And you could give it to kids. You could easily watch that with kids. And we talk about kids having tiny attention spans these days, but I think that'd lap it up.
Yeah.
I think the one part of Singing in the Rain which when I first watched it, I felt it. I didn't feel it as strongly this last time, but the Broadway Melody sequence, which is so clearly like I thought, this is so clearly like, we've got these musical numbers, let's just use them.
We've got Sid Charisse on, she's the beautiful dancer in the green dress, we've got her on contract,
Yeah.
we need to do a Charisse movie.
And when you read about how it did happen, it's pretty much what happened. The producer's like, we need to use this.
Yeah.
I've got this great idea, we're going to show a movie within a
It just
movie.
goes on forever, and it's not
Yeah.
related to the film's plot
No.
or the film within the film's plot.
Yeah.
It's a dream sequence, and then it cuts, and the head of studio is like,
Yeah.
oh, so this is what you want? Oh, I have a difficult time visualizing it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
and
We'll work it
absolutely.
in some way.
So it was like 1985 or 86. It'll be 85, I think, when I first watched Singin' in the Rain. And I agree with you. The whole Broadway Melody, subplotty dream sequence was the only bit of the film that I thought, even on my tiny young person level of not really consciously knowing what I was thinking, I was like, this seems a little out of place or a bit boring or a bit long-winded or whatever. Now, interestingly, Chazelle does a similar kind of thing. And this is not a spoiler, but obviously there are aspects of La La Land where there are dream sequency, maybe alternate realities.
And very, very long dream
alternative
sequences.
That's right, using cardboard sets and the costumes and the movement and everything. So it's a very, very clear, isn't it, throwback to callback, whatever the word
But
is.
it makes more sense in that film, I feel.
In what, La La Land?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It serves the purpose of the
It
story.
ties in.
Like, I went
narratively.
with my family, and three of my siblings and my parents, and I could hear my mother sobbing like 5 seats
Wow.
away all through that sequence. She said she couldn't believe how much she cried in that sequence.
That
So
is
the
a
moment
nice
it started,
sequence.
she was just gone, and then my sister set my sister off as well. And so it made sense, you know, but...
I have to say, I'm surprised that La La Land has taken everything by storm. I agree with you, Jeremy. I think that the not just the political situation, but the world situation over the last many, many years, I think, has made it a prime opportunity for going back to that's entertainment. But I am still surprised because of everything we've talked about in terms of it's not quite 100% fitting that square cube into that round hole, and and that's why I do wonder what sort of longevity. I think it'll be a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
As they say in Singin' in the Rain, it won't amount to a thing.
Well, thank you for listening to Cinema in Context. If you have a burning opinion that you'd love to share with us, we would love to hear it about both Singing in the Rain and La La Land. If you haven't seen either of these films, we suggest them to you, even more so Singing in the Rain, which is a definite classic. So check us out in a month's time as we discuss all things film and the connections between. Ka kia te anō.